You know, guys, I think most Republicans have forgotten that we're actually supposed to be living in a representative democracy, which means that you and I are supposed to vote on our representatives in our local districts, and then that person goes up to Washington, D.C., and then represents our interests. And that comes along with a co-equal branches of government, right? You've got the legislative, the executive, the judiciary, and when one of those branches gets out of control, like Donald Trump is currently doing, the other two branches are supposed to be there to actually check that power. And that's what is so gross about this Republican Party. These people have completely removed their backbone and become completely subservient to Donald Trump. But one of the ways this has been so effective is because Donald Trump is a wannabe authoritarian, and he rules with fear and intimidation. And one of the more moderate Republicans, Lisa Murkowski, recently came out and nearly admitted as much. Here she is talking about how she's trying not to compromise her own integrity, but is also calling out how Elon Musk is threatening challenges against anybody who might stand in their way. If you guys do appreciate my work, please do remember to subscribe.
And I'm not going to compromise my own integrity by hiding from my words when I feel they need to be spoken. I'm going to take the criticism that comes, and it may be that Elon Musk has decided he's going to take the next $1 billion that he makes off of Starlink and put it directly against Lisa Murkowski. And you know what? That may happen. But I'm not giving up 1 minute, one opportunity to try to stand up for Alaskans. But I got to figure out how to do that. And I need Alaskans' help to tell me what they're feeling so that I can help deal with that.
Now, admittedly, I don't agree with Lisa Murkowski on much, but to her credit, she is one of the few Republicans who has actually been, less afraid to actually speak out about what is actually going on in Washington, D.C. Everybody knows that Donald Trump will seek revenge against anybody who speaks out against him. And now you've got Elon Musk, who has promised to dump unlimited amounts of money into anybody that speaks out against the regime. So you got all these Republicans in Congress who, even if they wanted to speak out, they're too afraid to lose their jobs, which means they're actually not representing the interests of their constituents like our representative democracy would dictate that they actually do. That's why this is such a dangerous spot for our country to be in. We've got a wannabe authoritarian who has made all of the Republicans, or nearly all the Republicans, bend to his will. And now we're looking down the face of a fascist cult and heading straight over the cliff into some sort of dictatorship. Now, Lisa Murkowski goes on to actually call out Republicans who have been afraid to speak out.
I get criticized for what I say, and then everybody else is like, well, how come nobody else is saying anything? Well, figure it out, because they're looking at how many things are being thrown at me, and it's like, maybe I just better duck and cover. That's why you've got everybody just like zip lip, not saying a word, because they're afraid they're going to be taken down, they're going to be primaried, they're going to be given names in the media. You know what? We cannot be cowed into not speaking up.
So in other words, these Republicans are cowards. They are so afraid of Donald Trump and what he might do. They are so afraid that Elon might fund a primary against them that is, cowing their speech. That is saying, I'm not going to speak out. I'm not going to speak up. I'm too afraid. These people are pathetic, and every single one of them should be voted out of office. Just imagine a world where you had a Republican Party that actually stood strong on their principles and their values, and then somebody like Donald Trump came along. Would we be in the position that we are now? Would we be heading over the cliff to some sort of autocracy? Would that really be happening right now if the Republicans stood true to their values and their principles? Now, I know we do have the true believers, right? We've got people in the MAGA cult that do exist in Congress, but there is a subsection of Republicans. I don't know how maybe big it is, but there are Republicans that would otherwise be normal who have decided not to speak out because they are so fearful of Donald Trump. That is a dangerous, dangerous place for us to be in. And we're not just talking about funding primaries. We're not just talking about, leaking this or that against these particular individuals. We know, without a doubt, that Donald Trump has no problem at all invoking violence to try to hold on or get more power. And here is Lisa Murkowski saying that people in Congress are actually afraid.
What do you have to say to people who are afraid? Or who represent people who are afraid?
We are all afraid. Okay? It's quite a statement. But we are, we're in a time and a place where I don't know, I certainly have not been here before. And I'll tell you, I'm oftentimes very anxious myself about using my voice, because retaliation is real, and that's not right.
Retaliation is real, and that's not right. She is absolutely correct here. And we know that Donald Trump is prone to violence. Not he himself, but he has a MAGA cult that is more than willing to go and engage in violence to try to hold on to the power that Donald Trump has. I mean, look what happened on January 6th. Donald Trump riled up his supporters to try to overturn a free and fair election. They engaged in violence to try to keep him in office. That is what these people are afraid of. They are afraid of all of these MAGA lunatics who think that they are, protecting Lord Almighty and Donald Trump, and they are willing to go do whatever it is that they can to try to keep Daddy Trump in power. Lisa Murkowski is right. That is not right. That is not what should be happening in a functioning democracy. Our systems were set up in a way to try to prevent against a figure like Donald Trump coming to power. But because we have Republicans who have completely just, removed their backbone, become subservient to Donald Trump, this is the situation that we find ourselves in. Now, do I have, a little bit of empathy for these people who feel afraid of Donald Trump? Sure. I'm sure it's terrifying, especially if you got a family. We already saw how Mitt Romney had to hire his own private security because the MAGA lunatics were going after him. I have empathy for that situation. But just think about if all of these people were to band together and actually speak out against the authoritarian ambitions of Donald Trump. Just think about where we could be right now. But instead, Donald Trump has wielded this fear and this intimidation so effectively that these people are absolutely terrified to speak up. Now, Dan Goldman recently went on CNN and he was discussing this topic as well. And here he is discussing Trump's intimidation.
I have not heard it directly, but the fact that Donald Trump rules by threat and fiat has come out and has a real chilling effect on members of Congress, and mostly Republicans. And Mitt Romney had a whole chapter in his book about how a Republican colleague of his told him that he changed his vote because he was fearful for his family's safety. And you now have Donald Trump, who has a cult following behind him and threatens people, attacks them if they cross him, as well. And now he released and pardoned a militia of January 6th criminal convicts who will do anything he says. And so there's got to be thoughts of this. And let me just explain for a minute why that's so dangerous. Okay, you might say, all right, well, that's, a hazard of the job. But think about whether any of us want to vote a certain way, but because we fear for our personal safety or our family's personal safety, we decide to vote differently. We are no longer representing our constituents. We are representing something else more like the person, the bully who's threatening us. That is how Vladimir Putin operates. That is how Viktor Orban operates. That is how dictators operate. And that's how our democracy dies.
Yeah, he's exactly right. This is how democracies die. because people are so afraid to speak up against the wannabe strongman that they just cower in fear instead. And this is kind of bringing me back to where we started this piece. When you've got people in Congress who are so afraid to vote any other way than what Dear Leader says so, then they're not truly representing their actual constituents, the people who actually voted them into office. And that is not how a democracy is supposed to function, right? We vote these people in hoping that they will go and represent our interests, that they are going to make our lives a little bit better, that they are going to create a government that works how we want our government to work. Now, of course, we have, 25 to 35% of our population that is in the MAGA cult. I understand that that exists, but that's only 25 to 35%. What about all of these other moderate Republicans who were otherwise normal, who are now cowering in fear against Donald Trump? That should not be okay. We should hold our elected leaders to higher standards. We should have better systems in place to try to make sure that Donald Trump and his ilk don't even come close to power. It's an absolute shame that he was able to inspire a mob to an insurrection against the United States of America, and then we voted this asshole back into office for a second time. And part of this is because we have a Republican Party that has become so subservient to the MAGA cult that, it really didn't matter at the end of the day, right? We are supposed to be living in a representative democracy. And when you have a strong man at the top of when you've got the wannabe strong man at the top of the Republican ticket, and he is willing to wield his power and tries to intimidate you, tries to retaliate against you, then we are no longer truly living in a democracy. And that is a dangerous, dangerous place for our country to be in. And I want to show you this one last clip. It's not necessarily perfectly related, but Elizabeth Warren went on Colbert's show, I think a week or two ago, and listen to what she has to say here. This is quite interesting.
Behind closed doors, these people know this is crazy. Yeah. What's happening now? Are you having any conversations in the cloakroom with your counterparts across the aisle? People who were elected, had their own oaths, imagine love their country. What are they saying privately?
They don't make eye contact anymore.
Oh, that's not good.
No, it's not good.
Because they have no argument?
They know what's happening. Look, these guys are smart. They get it. They know what's happening.
They don't make eye contact anymore. That's kind of terrifying. You've got people in Congress who probably have some values, maybe some principles. They have shoved all of those aside to align with Dear Leader, but now they're not even making contact with the other side of the aisle because they are so ashamed of what is actually going on here. That is why I'm saying that each and every one of these Republicans need to be voted out of office. We need to vote in people who are willing to fight for our democracy. None of this authoritarian nonsense. We don't want a strongman leader. In fact, our country was set up to try to avoid another king. We were fleeing another autocracy, right? So we set up a representative democracy so the people were governed by the people, not the people were governed by the king. That is exactly contrary to what our founding fathers had in mind. So, next election, each and every one of these people should be voted out. We need to vote in fighters. We need to vote in people who are willing to stand up for their values, for their principles, for their morals. Otherwise, we're going to be heading off this fascist cliff faster than we can blink. I don't know what the saying is here. But again, this is not how the democracies... I'm having trouble speaking today. This is not how democracies are supposed to work. We are not supposed to have one all-powerful being who is dictating to everybody else how they should vote. We are supposed to be living in a representative democracy where the people govern, they elect their representatives so their interests can be represented in the government. And instead, we have this fascist regime trying an authoritarian takeover. So I will leave it there for now, guys. If you guys got anything out of this video, please do remember to smash that like button and subscribe. Maybe share with a friend or two. I'd very much appreciate that. We are trying to build something here on the left that adequately pushes back against the right-wing media ecosystem that just shovels Donald Trump shit every single day. So if you do like what I do here, please do remember to hit that subscribe button. It is free. And if you guys want to see how Donald Trump's polling is absolutely falling off a cliff right now because he has absolutely no idea what he is doing when it comes to these tariffs and the economy, go ahead and watch that video on the screen now. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on the next one.